Well, hello. Welcome to the Sister Flames podcast. I'm Jesi.
And I'm Missy. Hi.
I love it. Okay.
It's an
All
awkward.
right, Missy. So, what are we talking about today?
So today we wanted to talk about inactivity. What that,
Inactive, like being inactive in church or what?
yeah, like being inactive physically, spiritually, emotionally, mentally in regard
Mm,
to religion, spirituality. I mean, this is a term that's thrown around in the LDS church all the time. If you're not coming,
mhm.
if you're
Yeah.
coming, you're active, basically. But what does that all mean?
Ooh, that's a big question. It's a loaded question. I
Mm.
think a lot of people right now that are probably tuned in to this stage of our podcast are in a position where they probably do consider themselves quote unquote inactive from the Mormon church or the LDS faith, and either have their own spiritual growth happening beyond that, which I deem as not being inactive spiritually. So we're going to dive into the depths of that, what that means. And there are probably a lot of people that could be very active in the LDS faith that still appreciate everything that we're talking about and probably would want clarification on what it means to be active or inactive on all of the levels: mental, emotional, spiritual, and emotional. Mental, physical. Yes, thank you.
Mhm. Yes, our four bodies.
Yeah.
So let's start out by saying, okay, I have a question to start with, Jess. So at what point did you consider yourself, what is your status right now? Were you active or inactive in regards to the church, the Mormon church? And at what point did you consider yourself active or inactive?
Well, that's a loaded question because if you look at my history, you would say that I've been active and inactive on and off the last, probably 20 years. So currently, I would say I'm inactive physically. I don't go to church on Sundays. I don't partake of sacrament. I do not feel the calling. Um, so I would call myself inactive church wise, but so physical, maybe physical wise, church wise. But in terms of spiritual, I'm more active and more connected than I ever have been. And I don't define my spiritual activity to four walls at church on Sunday or holding a calling. So this is why we really want to define what inactivity means, right? And where we kind of settle on what feels right for us. Because we have family members or friends or a community that we've been involved with for maybe our entire lives within the church, that place this label on us. And we can either accept that or we can understand that it's a viewpoint that's being seen from a culture and recognize that that doesn't have to define what inactivity means for us. So,
Well, what if we broke it down to, so physical, you said physically you don't attend. So physical is whether you show up or not. Emotional, what if that means whether like your attachments to it? So your emotional ties to the church. Mental being the belief systems that you
mhm,
have adopted and applying those into your life. And then spiritual, your connection with a higher power, with God, how that is in your life.
You said that it was 4 minutes and 44 seconds into the recording when you said higher connection to God.
The angels are
Fun
out.
to note that.
So physically, you said physically. So
Yeah.
emotionally, what are your emotional attachments?
Mm, I would say that one's a little deeper. I would say I have emotional attachments to the LDS faith and the teachings, that are taught within it. I have emotional attachments also to some of the people that I only know through church. Um, and the emotional attachments to maybe the things that we went through as we grew up in young women's or met like a really amazing soul because I connected spiritually with that person because we had the same belief system, right? So I'd say emotionally, I'm probably very present.
Very active emotionally.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Because there are still so many people that I can even consider inactive that don't go to church and probably don't even practice a lot of the doctrine or the church doctrine. I wouldn't necessarily say disagree with the teachings because I think that's a completely different thing as we've talked about before. I believe the faith and the quote unquote culture of the church is two completely different things. And I feel like you never lose the faith. You don't ever lose your truth, your testimony.
Well, I would argue that you do. You
Yeah.
can't. Oh,
Well, yeah, you can. But the truths, I feel like, create kind of a foundation for what you believe to be true for you. So a lot of that serves you still, so you hold on to it.
yeah. But sometimes people let go of all of it because it serves them best to let go of all of it.
Yes. But ultimately, when they circle back around, do they really? Or are they holding space for a lot of the teachings that they've learned that they realize, oh, yeah, there was actually truth there. I just have to look at it from a different way and accept it through a different
Well,
lens.
no, because people will leave and they're totally atheists and they reject everything. So, and I don't know that everyone ultimately comes back around.
Hmm.
Mm-mm. No, definitely not.
I don't know.
I think also that people may try to let go of it all, but it just keeps coming. There's these connections that they just cannot sever as hard as they try.
And I think too many people try to sever it, but they don't need to.
Oh, but it's part of the process. Sometimes you have to. It's like
Why?
breaking up. Why? That's what I'm trying to do right now, Jesse. Like I'm trying to clear and purge. So it's like, have you ever cleaned a desk? You're like
Mhm.
emptying it of all the stuff, scraping, like scraping off the gum, wiping off the marker. So you have it all clean and perfect. And then you look at all the stuff on the floor and decide what you want to put back in. Sometimes you trash it all and buy all new office supplies and start fresh. Like sometimes
But
that's what,
you still have the same desk.
or sometimes your house burns down. You have to buy a new Jesse. I don't know. Well,
What I'm saying
like,
is there
you
has
get
to
what
be
I'm
some
saying.
sort of foundation. Otherwise, you wouldn't have been able to make the decision that it is or isn't going to move forward with you. There's still some sort of foundation.
So, do you believe that anyone who leaves the church ultimately comes back to some part of it as a truth?
Hmm.
Hmm. Please write in. Send us a message.
And I'm saying
Let us.
once you go through the process of stepping away, and I've said before on the podcast that I had a bishop who said, you know, you need to step away from saying your prayers, going to the temple, holding a calling. There's no point for you to do any of that if you don't know why you would be doing it, because you're not doing it for God. You don't need to do any of that stuff for God. You would be doing it for you. So he gave me permission to stop shaming myself and putting these expectations on myself and stop assuming that I had to do these things in order to gain some sort of, I don't know, privilege or some sort of acceptance from God or to receive some sort of blessings from heaven or whatever. So he literally questioned my faith because here I'm feeling guilty if I don't hold a calling and if I stop wearing my garments and if I stop going to the temple.
Mhm.
I've lived my whole life believing my family is only going to be together forever if all of these things. And I pay my tithing and all of these things, right? That we are
Mhm.
accustomed to doing because that's how we're taught within the LDS faith and most religions. So I'm not saying that people come back around necessarily to those things, but there's this beautiful experience and embodiment of just genuine spirituality that you have, even if you do grow up within a religion, even if you do grow up atheist, even if you just grow up in the Buddhist philosophy or you're a naturalist and you just live in nature and you're just a mystic. I feel like there is still a journey of the soul that still resonates with any teachings of truth. Because you can't just say, oh, that's true for me and it's not true for you. That's looking at something from a different perspective, but truth is truth. And we eventually, as we awaken, we all find the same truth,
And that would be,
whatever God's truth is.
what is that?
And so you can't deny that there isn't sprinkles of truth in all philosophies, in all religion, on many, many paths. And so when I say I believe people come back around after they've been through the process that they need to go through in order to kind of cleanse their palate and like feel free. And I call it creating a blank canvas. I tell people all the time, well, for a long time, I was telling people that I was a Christian yogi because I no longer aligned with the doctrine of religious teachings, but I resonated with the life of Christ and the Christ consciousness teachings. But then I also like to throw in my Buddhist philosophy of just the beingness and just being present and being one with the creator and accepting that everyone is on their own journey and on their own path. Right. So here I have been telling people for a very long time that I don't necessarily associate with the LDS faith, but I do take some things with me that I can't deny growing up when I taught me and allowed me to feel truthfulness to things that I was being taught. Right. And that doesn't mean we're connected to this religion just because we have a truth that we carry with us through the journey of growing up Mormon or being Mormon for 40 years. And that's why I say that eventually we come back around and we realize this served me all along through my quest for truth and through my journey of spirituality, that I can not reject it in order to feel like I am my own sovereign being who can step away from the doctrine of religious dogma that no longer serves me or humanity, but there's still these teachings of truth. And that is why, to me, religion can be such a dangerous thing when we get so caught up in it, because you can take the truths and they're so twisted for mind control and brainwashing and just, you know, allowing the masses to be controlled by one belief system.
Hmm. I'm still confused how, I mean, people may come back around to some sprinkle of truth within the religion, but that doesn't mean they're coming back around to the religion or necessarily even appreciating that they got that from the religion. They may come back around and say, this was just a part of me all along. And it's something that maybe the religion used to their advantage against me, or that I thought that I needed some sort of mediator to discover in order to discover within myself, but it was there all along, and I didn't need some third party to access that for me or show me that that was even there. They were actually in my way the whole time. I mean, Buddhists don't even believe in God, right? Buddhists believe there's there's all is one and like consciousness, right? Like our church, our church, Mormonism doesn't teach beingness. They don't teach meditation or even unity consciousness. I don't believe that it does teach that we are all one. I I feel like it teaches more individualism and that we are an individual having an individual experience that's not replicatable. Replicatable? What is that word? It can't be replicated. And
Mhm.
um and that you get one shot. And this is your one precious life, your one shot. You're the only person who's ever going to do this one thing. And then you go back, and then in heaven, you're still going to be one thing. Like that, even after we die, I'll still be Melissa after I die for all eternity with the same
Mhm.
family, with the same group and the same understanding. But it never teaches that at any point we'll all become one and that we can actually exist in this state of being together. Um, and so when we come back, so you say people might come to that place, that isn't Mormonism. And there is an author who I do really appreciate, Thomas McConkie, who I've met, and he does actually integrate LDS. He's active LDS and Buddhist. I don't know if he's like both, but he practices Buddhism, and he's actually written some books about him, about combining the two. And
Mhm.
that I read one of them, and it was actually beautiful. I really enjoyed it, and I enjoyed his presentation that I saw. Um, and and I do feel like that's something that's missing in the church,
Mhm.
right? That like true Christ consciousness of unity, and we're all
Mhm.
one, and we have that ability to heal and lead and stand in power and strength. And it does feel like this missing piece. Anyway,
Mhm.
um, okay. So if you feel, I have more questions. If you, since you feel like there are still pieces of the church of Mormonism and religion that you are still attached to, where does that come in your mental body? Like your activity, your mental activity. Are you, are there still things that are programmed in your brain that you are trying to detach from, or that you have no intention of ever detaching from?
I would say I've done a really good job of detaching from a lot of the mental belief systems that we were raised to believe. And again, this is all personal, right? So we each have our own personal understanding of the church and of any religion, really, even, right? Because there are Catholics out there that are devout Catholic and have a completely different perspective about the religion than many other Catholics, right? And I think it's the same thing in all beliefs and all religions, and that's okay. I think that's the beauty of the diversity of the viewpoints that come from having integration and certain understanding and experiences as we practice upon these beliefs and what resonates for us, right? And you and I have talked many times about how you and I had very different experiences that created very different viewpoints about the LDS faith. I mean, I was excommunicated when I was 18, and then for 8 years, wrongly excommunicated, right? But I don't hold any bitterment towards that, not anymore, because I've been able to, like I said, go full circle and truly understand the gifting in that and the lesson that was there for me. You know, for years I rejected wanting to even be open to understanding the bishop's point of view as to why he felt that it would serve me best to excommunicate me and why he wrestled with that and why he finally decided that, and how it was actually to free me from my covenants that I had not truly understood that I made at baptism being 8 years old. And when I started recollecting that for my own self, and we can go deeper into this in another podcast, but when I really started like really dissecting that and knowing, dropping into who I am and what I really wanted and how I really wanted to live my life spiritually, it was like, yeah, I didn't want to be held accountable for something that I truly didn't understand or even agree with. And it wasn't until 8 years later when I was searching for something in my life. And I had already had the LDS faith in my life before that had blessed me in incredible ways, as you know, through especially through my eating disorder. When I came to the other side of that, I mean, that was just an incredibly strong spiritual time of my life. And so I wanted that back. I wanted the aspect of what I believed the LDS faith could give me. I wanted those aspects. I had kids now, I had 3 boys. I wanted a forever family, right? Like I had believed in those promises and all of those specific pieces of doctrine. And I just desired that. And so that was the catalyst then to me changing my life and stop drinking and stop smoking and like really looking at the type of lifestyle that I wanted to create and embody for myself. And the beauty of how the soul really expanded and found forgiveness for myself and found grace and really found my own sovereign, just like straight narrow as to what I want, and nobody was going to stop me. And so, I mean, I have stories of, just praying to want to overcome, desire to want to smoke and drink. And I can't even tell you how I just would go out with my friends and he was like, I just didn't desire it anymore. It's different for me now, but it's based on, what I want and what I feel. Um, I have the freedom and the ability to be able to do. But back then that was all I was focused on. And so then I was able to actually spiritually manifest the type of lifestyle and life that I wanted based on the things that I believed were true at the time. And so when I got rebaptized, I mean, I was incredibly devout for 10 years. Was I searching the scriptures every day? And even as the Young Women's President, like teaching the classes based on all the lessons and all these scriptures that I marked? No, I've never, ever been good at reading scriptures. I've never, ever felt compelled to have to give a talk or teach a lesson based on all of these scriptures. For some reason, that never resonated with me. And reading it can be difficult for me. And a lot of that stuff goes over my head. And so I would just pull from my own life experiences with the School of Hard Knocks. And I would draw from my own alchemy the experiences to teach the young women, to teach the youth, to teach with anyone truly of my own experiences of how I found God and how I connect to God and how I know that I'm loved no matter what I do. And it wasn't based on some sort of doctrinal teachings or spiritually scripted, verses from the Book of Mormon or from the Bible. It came straight from my heart, channeled completely from my wiser self, full of wisdom, because I have actually experienced and embodied that for myself. That shifts your perspective when you go through things like that, where you're wrestling to embody your own spiritual sovereignty and make it what you choose to make it, even within the confines of religion, which is what I believe that I did, which is why when I had my spiritual awakening and I started really pondering and learning more, because when you're a true seeker, you just can't stop. You are restless. You are constantly searching for truth. You're constantly searching for more and more and more. And that's me. So people want to call me a conspiracy theorist. They can. Good. Because I don't want to follow the narrative. I want to find my own answers, right? Even in religion, call me the religious conspiracy theorist. Good. I hope like people can look at me and say, she went to go find her own truth. Why do you think I am so strong? Because that's what I did. Because I'm not willing to take the narrative. I'm not willing to listen to the outside world. I don't give a flying whatever, what anybody thinks of me. Because if I did, I would hold myself back. And that's what we need to recognize, is that we hold ourselves back and will literally self-sabotage ourselves because we are too worried about the world and how other people view us and think about us. And so then we continue to create the pattern and the vicious cycle for ourselves, and we never learn anything. We have to be brave in order to get out there to really learn who we are and what we really want. And so as I'm going through my spiritual awakening and I'm recognizing my soul is desiring truth, as I start listening to all of these different things that are coming out and brought into the light, I still use my discernment. I'm still allowing myself to have my own personal revelation and using and governing my own free will and recognizing that anything that threatens that, anything that tries to take away my ability to choose for myself, my ability to receive my own personal revelation, and to really continue to search and ask questions, anything that questions me, I know is a block in my path and does not serve me and is trying to stop me from really finding the truth to the world, to who we are as spiritual beings. And I recognize it's just not what it seems. Not with our eyes, not with our actual eyes, not with the ears, with our things that we are hearing out there in the world. The world is not as it seems. And this is why the meditation and really coming inward and connecting to our own sovereign self is so important, and it's not practiced enough out there in the world. But if you want to fast track your way to spiritual truth and you really want to know who you are, sit in meditation for, a couple hours a week. And and the things, all of the answers are going to come in the stillness and the quietness, the still small voice, right? Like that spirit will talk. But forcing if you're forcing yourself to go through a movement where you're holding resentment and you're holding bitterness and you're holding restriction or rigidity because you are forcing yourself to create a blank canvas, or you're forcing yourself to allow the pendulum to swing. There was just so intense and extreme over here. So now it has to swing in order for me to find equilibrium. That's not finding equilibrium. There is a big piece of letting everything go, but it's not forcing it from what resonates with us that we believe is true or not. It's literally letting go and allowing everything to just sit to the side and say, there might be good things in here. There might be things that experiences that I've had. There might be a lot that serves me here, but all I know is it's tied to a lot of the things that I've questioned.
So you're talking specifically in regards to religion, that
Anything.
okay. So like the
But
pendulum
yes,
to
mostly
the other
religion.
side is what?
So then you come into the space where you recognize that you don't have to hold on to anything. And you can start over and you can have a blank canvas. But the
What
thing
is
is,
pendulum swinging to the other side? Is that not letting go of everything?
it's
Like,
pushing things away.
what do you mean?
It's pushing. So what I see a lot of people do is they massively reject and then they push. They just shove it far, far away. And they're not willing to it's like doing your shadow work, right? Allowing like the shadow to come forward, and it's really freaking uncomfortable. And instead of being curious about it and asking, why am I getting so triggered when this thing is coming up for me? And how can I look at this and understand it, understand myself, and alchemize this experience and this feeling that I'm having so that I can recognize the gift that it's
Right.
actually teaching me.
But sometimes we have to push it away. The pendulum does have to swing to the other side. That's how That's how these things work. They go all the way to the other side and then back and forth until they meet the middle. Like
Right.
sometimes we need to purge and we need to let go and go into a totally different room and not look at that room for a long time until we're ready to come back and go through the papers. Like it it seems like a lot to ask to skip that whole painful part of like the isolation and the anger and the pushing away. And it's like boundaries. We need to draw these firm boundaries and just have some space. So I, it speaking from experience, that's necessary, especially if you're an emotional person or a people pleaser or an empath or someone who really wants to do the right thing and can get so easily sucked in too far over here and then never know what that middle blank canvas even looks like. So it can be helpful to swing over to the other side in this analogy before then we're able to even consider the shadows and the darkness because it's just it's so heavy and it's such a burden. It's a big pill to swallow and we need to reset. And
Yeah.
usually there's no support. Like who's going to sit with us through that? All of our old friends are over here on this side of the swing and it's lonely. And
Yeah.
the
No.
choice of like who's going to guide me? Who's going to teach me shadow work? Am I just supposed to go read the Red Book by Carl Jung and like learn it all by myself? Like who's going
Hmm.
to do that? Like we have, you know, you could learn on these 1 minute Instagram videos about shadow work, but that's not going to take you very far. And so people are learning bits and pieces here and there, but it's really hard to get started.
It
And
is, but that's again looking outside of ourselves to try and find the answers,
mhm,
right? We don't know that it's called shadow work. We just move through it when we focus inward and we let go of the world around us.
mhm.
There's no other way forward except through
What is the dark night
ourselves.
of the soul? It's like it's part of our psyche and progression. We have to go through that dark night of the soul. We have to feel the depths of the pain that triggers this new thing that's happening inside.
Yeah.
Everyone goes through it.
Yeah. One point I do want to make is that when I'm talking about swinging the pendulum, I'm not talking about like you trying to create a blank canvas to start over, because that's what I did, and working through the emotions and awakening to a lot of the culture and the doctrines that were really kind of set in place to control. But in the Mormon church, it's very well known that, especially in the area of Utah, that people go from being following the doctrine to literally swinging, not just swinging in the pendulum, but literally swinging, right? Like where it's just this like drastic difference where they have to experience the extremism of the Mormon culture and the extremism of the Jack Mormon culture, right? And so there are a lot of people that are on different paths of maybe leaving the church or questioning their belief, or I mean, we see all kinds of it. It's like, I mean, right now, one of the biggest series on Netflix is this Mormon Housewives.
Great Lives of Mormon Wives.
Right. And it doesn't depict the religion at all. It just showcases these quote unquote, I mean, they still consider themselves to be Mormon, which blows me away that they wouldn't have been excommunicated by now. I mean, they want to depict themselves as being Mormon housewives, but yet it's really just for them to get attention in relation to the swingers scandal that they were a part of, which doesn't, I mean, it just boggles my mind that people would then believe that, you know, the Mormon lifestyle is like that. And it's not. Apparently it is for some. But I just feel like some of us don't know ourselves in religion. And so then instead of just like letting things go and finding who we are, we have to completely resist and reject everything that we think that we're supposed to do. And then we do the complete opposite of it. And we think that's going to create some sort of like justification or balance for finding out what we really, really want. Right?
Don't like the word justification because that feels like you're justifying your sin, right? It feels like kind of a self-righteous kind of word. I don't like that word justification, but it like I I'm defending this a little bit. This
Okay.
thing that happens where you feel then like you've been oppressed and you need to feel free. You need to feel free. And what does freedom look like and feel like? I have no idea. Maybe this feels like freedom. Maybe this feels like freedom. And so then people start speaking or expressing anger or frustration or hanging out with different people or drinking or smoking or whatever. Like it's or wearing the tank top at Thanksgiving, people they need to feel free, and that's like is the root of it. And it's a natural reaction to feeling so repressed so much. And then finally feeling like, no, I want to own my body. I want to it's becoming active in my own life and my own choice. And so that is exciting, actually, to be able to finally feel like you're able to do that. And that does help one to learn discernment, which is something we are not taught growing up is discernment. We are taught how to obey a master and how to listen to authority and follow teachings and not to sit back and decide for ourselves what feels good. Anytime we make a little mistake, we're trained to repent for it and ask for forgiveness for it. Forgiveness from God? Really? Like forgiveness from the bishop? Like, what about recognizing our own journey? That's not a part of it. And so, I mean, I feel like when I finally went out on my own, I got into a lot of messed up situations because I had no idea what a safe person was. I thought that if someone looked Mormon and good on the outside, or if they were a turned missionary and went to church every Sunday, that meant that they would respect me and be a good person. And that was not the case. And like actually the friends and boyfriends I had in high school who were not Mormon were actually like better people in behind closed doors than some of these other people who were shining stars in their ward. So learning like to trust that intuition, that's something that is sort of taken away. And so what do you do when you're hanging here back to the pendulum, right? And you're being held on, you cut that cord, you don't know where to stop because you never learned where to stop. And you can't trust anything that was said to you before because that made you feel bad, that made you feel oppressed. This is something I don't want to feel again. I want to feel free and safe in my own body, but there's no guidance system, especially if you're like in your 30s, right? Like you've already given your body to children. You've already like given your life to an organization. And it's starting from the beginning, really, but there's so much fear and shame attached to the process that it's it's hard to then know where you're supposed to go. So,
Mhm.
okay, Jess, can we recap? So, okay, so mentally, in your search for truth, you're very active. In religious programming, inactive. That's your
Yes.
emotionally in regards to religion, inactive or active.
You mean I'm like emotionally connected to some of the relationships I've built through religion?
Yeah. So you're emotionally attached to people, but not
Mhm.
the religion. Yeah. So emotionally active in your relationship.
Not necessarily. I am still actually attached to people who are very much attached to the religion, and I hold a huge amount of appreciation for them because they are all in with what they truly believe to be true for them.
Mhm.
And I don't judge that in any way.
Yeah. But are you actively, is your heart actively connected to the church?
Through them.
Not through them, to the church itself. Like your heart's connected to your relationships and people and you love them. But like the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, to Mormonism, is your heart open to it and connected?
Yeah, I would
Oh,
say it is actually
okay.
because I still feel like amongst everything else right now, currently in the world, you can't, the truthfulness of it, you can't find anywhere, any other religion on earth right now. I have profound respect for the doctrine and the teachings of Christ that are understood and taught out of love and respect, knowing that those people that teach that appreciate that people have to come with that with their own discernment and receive their own revelation as to whether or not it's true. So yeah, I have no problem with allowing my church records to stay a part of the church. But here's the thing, Missy, I've made peace with so much of my journey already. I'm at a completely different stage than you are at and most people are at. I have so much comfort and so much, I just feel so much expansion and a deeper viewpoint of understanding the esoteric and the spiritual viewpoint of like the beautiful lessons that have come to me through a lot of the challenges and confusing aspects of things that I've gone through within the LDS faith. And again, to me, this is why it is so clear to me that there is the faith, which are based on the teachings of Christ and the goodness and the beautiful messages. And then there's so much truth there. And then there is this Mormon culture, but also the twisting of the teachings of Christ. I also see that in the midst of it all. I hold space for accepting all of it because we're all on our own journey to decipher all of that. I've been able to decipher all of that for myself, and I've been able to take my own experiences growing up Christian, rolled along with a lot of the teachings of the LDS faith that have served me so well that for me, I would never forsake that, or I would never allow that to not be a part of my path or a part of my story. A lot of that has helped to develop me and help me build this more expansive, alchemizing understanding for what my soul really wanted to learn and experience through the embodiment of it. I'm in a very, very different place than most people who are awakening to such a degree where they realize they've kind of been duped and bamboozled with the way the church has governed a lot of the doctrine and made certain people feel. I can totally relate to that. And that's why I appreciate your perspective and where you are right now. And if you need to cut everything in order for you to find who you are, then I totally believe that is a path that you should take.
Well, yeah, I'd love to go through like my different levels of activity so that we can figure that out. But before, my question is, why then are you physically inactive if you still feel all this? Do you feel like you've learned enough? Like you have enough of it in your life? Like, is there not more beauty that you feel like you would be exposed to, or you could learn from or experience by attending or
Uh-huh.
even attending the temple?
That is a great question. And I have sat down to reflect on a lot of that and considered being more active to feel the spirit in church on Sunday. Would I partake of sacrament? No, because I no longer believe that Jesus died. I don't think he died. I don't think he atoned for anybody's sins. I don't believe that anymore. So I wouldn't partake of sacrament just because for myself, I feel like it's just kind of a representation symbolically of cannibalism. But does that make the people that are doing that bad? No, because they are not aware. They know not what they know, right? This is kind of like oh, she thinks that. I believe we save ourselves. But here's the thing, you feel the spirit when you're gathering together with other people who truly in their heart have the intention to come there for a purpose to connect to God, and they have that strong spiritual purpose to really feel of Christ's love and his teachings. You can't deny walking into church on Sunday when the primary is singing all of these beautiful songs about how Jesus loves them and God's plan for them and not feel the spirit, right? It is, and even to this day, I will testify that being in the celestial room of the temple, I have a very vivid and specific memory of one of the first times I ever sat in the celestial room. I've never felt the spirit stronger in my life. But it was because I was the one who was moving through with the devotion to receive and stay open to accepting and receiving the power of God in my life. It wasn't because I was doing it because I cared about what other people thought or I was shaming myself for it or anything like that. This was a path on my life that I actually wanted to experience and embody for myself. So there are a lot of LDS saints who are on that same path. And then there are a lot who it just doesn't resonate with them because they can see where things have misaligned. And so I can hold space for all aspects of it. And it really comes down to it's what you make out of it. That's why that conversation, that podcast episode we recorded with Vinny, you know, he's going to be an active member of the LDS faith until he believes it no longer serves his spiritual sovereignty. And I actually support that. Will there come a time where I feel like all religions will dissolve? Absolutely. But there is spirituality within religion. And that's why I say that when people go full circle, they eventually come back to the truths that really resonated with them, that they learned, that they can make peace with, to add to this newfound blank canvas and say, these things actually really serve me and I understand them better now. And then I'm going to build from that.
Okay.
Is that going to change my activity? I don't know. Sometimes I think about going to church with Desmond on Sundays. Does that mean I'm going to stop drinking a glass of wine every once in a while for dinner? No, because I don't follow the doctrine. I mean, if I were to sit down in front of a bishop, I'd be disfellowshipped or excommunicated based on their rules because, I have boyfriends that I'm not married to and, I'm intimate with, obviously. You can't be with somebody for 4 years and just say, hey, we're just sleeping next to each other. We're going to live with each other. We're just going to, come on. Right?
Well, otherwise you'd probably be married if you're still together, so that you could.
Well, and who's to say I ever want to get married again? You know, I mean, I might not, I don't really want to, even if I spend 16 years with somebody, I might not want to get married to them again. Why? Because I have some legal piece of paper to say that,
Well, I'm just saying that if you're dating a non-Mormon for 4 years, then it's not gonna last if you're not intimate with each other,
oh,
and
right.
that's what I'm saying. Keep like,
Yes.
BS, I'm out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But does that mean that I can't or shouldn't go to the Mormon church on Sundays? And no, I can still go. And guess what? God's spirit is still going to be there. I can still access it. The belief that somebody thinks that because I'm no longer quote unquote worthy and so then I don't have the spirit to be with me, I think that's bullcrap. I don't think that's true at all. So yeah, like there are things that upset me. It's like, why does the church doctrine try to teach these things and convince people that you have to follow this way or you're not going to get all of these special rewards and glory and whatever? But it's all about the intention of your heart and surrounding yourself with people that have the same pure intention, but that, like you said, I really love that word is discernment, but are still using their discernment. So they're staying open minded to recognize that if the truth were to hit them in the face and they were to see the corruption, even within the Mormon church, they would still say, yep, I can no longer be associated to this church, but I'm taking the truths that I learned with me.
Mhm.
It was like when I was excommunicated, I still had a testimony of the things that I knew were true. Nobody took anything from me. And it's the same thing with anybody who decides to leave the church. You still had this amazing experience that activated your spirituality in some way. You are leaving with it and you will come back to it because it's yours.
Right. Like I said before, you don't need a third party to hand that to you or decide when you are worthy of it or when you get to have it based on your behavior and your actions.
Yeah.
Going back to the primary songs, I mean, I was the primary music leader for a year and the president for a little over a year until I asked to be released. And one of the big issues I had was that I would look at songs for the program or even to lead, and I started pulling songs out of the pile that I refused to teach them because it wasn't in alignment with what I thought. And the
Mhm.
list got smaller and smaller of songs that I felt aligned. So then the next primary program that I did, it was like the same songs, basically. But I mean, there's one that gets me and I keep thinking of it. It's there's a right way to live and be happy. It is
Mm.
choosing the right every day. And it's funny because I actually looked at the lyrics of that song and I thought that it said, "Oh, follow the teachings of Jesus. He will, if I follow the teachings of Jesus, he will help me and show me the way." That's what I thought when I sing it in my head, random
Mhm.
doing dishes or whatever. That those are the words I think that if I follow the teachings of Jesus, then he will help me and show me the way. But those aren't the words actually. I looked it up, or maybe this was a Mandela effect. That it's I will follow the teachings of Jesus. And I don't even remember the words, but it's not that it's something that's not so controlling. But I remember it as something else. Just that happens. But I like that there is one right way to live and be happy. I don't agree with that at all. At all. So I couldn't
Yeah.
ever kids sing that song. And there's so many songs like that where the messages are just, really? I don't think we actually teach that if we were to look at it a little deeper. Or
Mhm.
we do believe that, and that's a problem for me. But and I also totally agree that it serves people and it serves them well. And you, what did you say? You get what you want out of it or what you put into it? Or, I mean, you can,
Mhm.
it's your own experience. And if you want what it has to offer, then great, you're in alignment. But if you don't want what it has to offer or it feels out of alignment, that doesn't mean that you didn't put enough into it. So I want to add that caveat that it's not because you didn't want it enough or you wanted the wrong thing. It just did not align because there's so many so many times where I went to the temple or did the thing, and I actually went pleading and needing answers to things, answers that I never got. And so I felt like, okay, I'm the one person that God doesn't talk to. And it's really disheartening to go to the temple so hopeful that you're going to get the answers and then leave just more confused than you were before. And I had that experience many times. Um, like in 2016, 2017. Um, but I know that people do get a lot of out of it, and it enriches their lives and it makes their lives beautiful and whole and complete. And that's wonderful for them. But as much as I tried to be like those people that seemed so happy and so in line, the more I felt like less than and less worthy and like a try hard. So I yeah, I want to go over my activity because this will help me to work it out.
Mhm. Yeah, no, I'm excited.
Okay.
Okay, so in terms of physically, how would you define your inactivity?
Okay. So physically I'm inactive, but I do go to um performances like when my kids give talks or sing. I go and watch them and then I leave after,
Mhm.
don't stay. For
Mhm.
I went to the Halloween party.
Yay. It's fun.
And yeah, and people are starting to notice that I don't come. It's
Mhm.
easy to not really notice when people aren't coming regularly because everyone's kind of in their own area of service during that class time. But people are like, "Oh, I haven't seen you for so long. How are you?" Right? I'm like, "I'm good." Um,
Mhm.
but I am inactive. I was okay, so physically inactive. Yes. For about since February of this year. So, and then emotionally, I was emotionally checked out for a long time. So for years, I was emotionally inactive, though I was physically active because I did not want to. I felt like I was stuck, trapped. I wasn't allowed
Mhm.
to act for myself, and I just had to follow the fold, right? Just be one of the sheep. So in order to do that, I had to disassociate a little bit and pretend and wear a mask. And so that self-denial, I had to kind of close my heart off a bit. And so now I am emotionally attached in a way that I'm struggling with this. Like these feelings are now starting to come up that I denied for years of that pain of feeling stuck and oppressed and being controlled and not being able to think for myself. And also the confusion and the doubt. And so things are coming up and they're all attached to and tied to my experience in the church. And as they come up, I have to release them and then I'm able to move on. And I always feel
Mhm.
so
Yeah.
I'm giving space for that, but there are these emotional risings that come up and sometimes they're anger, sometimes they're resentment, sometimes they're appreciation because I do have appreciation and gratitude for certain parts of it. Um, and so I am very emotionally tied. Um, it's not because of the relationships I have with people, though. That actually makes it a lot harder. That complicates my process. It feels like it would be so much easier just to make a clean break and just be all by myself and not have to talk to anyone for a while and process all of it. But instead, I am, my husband and children are all active and it's
Mhm.
very involved part of my life still. So I can't have that clean break. And
Mhm.
so I am kind of stuck over here on the pendulum trying, like, I can't even get a blank slate. It's impossible. I can't
Mhm.
get anything. And so, um, I am, it's a very complicated emotional attachment that I have. Um, but it's not resentment for it in my home. I don't feel that. It's the any resentment that comes up is when I'm not allowed to talk about it or I feel like I'm being oppressed or controlled in any way in my expression. then it definitely comes up as anger because when it comes up, I need to say it and let it out. And I need to stick to my boundaries of I don't want to watch general conference. I don't want to talk about the talks. I don't want to say this prayer. I don't, and the things that are triggering for me, I do have to say no to because I can only handle so much at a time. And then what was the other one? Mental.
Mhm.
Yeah. Mentally, very active mentally. And it is a battle in my mind because I'm I'm not starting, I'm in this process of shifting these beliefs and becoming aware of them and trying to do it with grace because of the situation I'm in with my family and
Mhm.
to not explode my life. But it's very confusing. And I do things without thinking, like unconsciously. And then I realize that's not actually like if I thought through that action or that thing, I wouldn't have done that because that doesn't feel authentic to me and where I'm at. So a lot of things are really confusing. So I'm very active and in trying to release that programming. I do a ton of journaling. I do a ton of talking about it. And it's a messy process.
Mhm. And you know why I think it's messy is because the ego and the psyche of understanding how to let go of those belief systems, it just needs to unravel. Like we need to bring that thought into the body to digest it. Like it has to be literally brought out of your mind into your stomach so that you can digest that. Because as all-encompassing being, we always talk about you and I that mind, body, spirit. And a lot of this process for me, because I do yoga and because I'm so into my body, it has helped me to process and digest so many of these thoughts and fear and confusion and just acceptance. And so I bring it into my body and I feel it for as long as I need to. And then I move it into my heart space and I find compassion and understanding and acceptance and grace and just like, and that's even where I like then expand emotionally or spiritually in relation to that. And so then I can rest assured, I can like bring this back up to my mind and say, I've recycled this thought a couple times now, and I have felt this out and really used my entirety to try to discern, decipher, let things settle, like be open minded long enough to accept that to be an actual fact or truth or outcome or potential outcome and played around with the idea of maybe it just being a potential reality or a potential truth. And then suddenly I'm like, I could actually get behind that thought. I could get behind that belief. I could get behind that feeling or the reality of that being actual because it's not so far fetched anymore. It feels like that resonates a lot more than me just being afraid of believing it because it just goes against every single thing that I've been programmed to believe.
Like, can you give an example?
Yeah, like the whole idea of accepting that Christ is not my savior. I mean, I went through my eating disorder at
Is it an
16,
accepting that Christ is your savior, accepting that he's not?
accepting that he is still my brother, my best friend. I could never wrap my brain, I could never wrap any aspect of me around Christ taking upon him every single person who ever comes to earth, their afflictions and their sins. And, you know, you just, how can you accept something that seems so unfathomable? How does that land? It
Mhm.
never lands. I'm not saying that Christ didn't come here with a purpose to teach. He was a master teacher. He was like, I mean, he's an ascended master. He is so,
It's 3:33 as you say that.
well, I love it. 33, the master
Ooh.
number. And he was a master teacher, and he came here to teach us that he was the I am, and that we are the I am, and that what he can do, we can also do. And we start realizing that, not that we've been lied to, because many of the people that are teaching the doctrine of these things don't even recognize for themselves that it's a twisted truth, right? But when we can start sitting with it and recognize that I'm responsible for myself, I'm not going to learn anything if something's taken from me. How does it make sense for me to just believe that Jesus lived and that Jesus is king and I have to worship Jesus in order to be saved? Saved from what? The devil? Right? Like, I've been able to scale back so far to be able to look at how all this is playing out, to recognize that in the 3D, it's just the manifestation of what we see it as in duality, and the label and the identity that we give dark or light, right? And the density of it, because it's energy. And so when you start tapping into all of these different aspects of truth within spirituality and who we truly are, you start energy, frequency, you start understanding that the story no longer makes sense. Yeah. And then you start appreciating that you allowed this beautiful belief to carry you to a certain point where you were mature enough and seeking for enough truth to let it go so there could be a rebirthing, which is what we constantly need to be doing in life, is just a constant rebirth and an unfolding, constant unfolding, right? When flowers die, they fall off the stem, and then another bloom comes and another flower blooms. And this is the process that we need to go through as well. We can't stay stagnant. The belief served us. We were meant for the conditioning. We pick our parents, we pick our life, we pick where we're born, we pick where we're raised, we pick where we live in the world, because our souls want a specific form of conditioning
Mhm.
as we grow, so that we can learn more in depth about ourselves and what we do and don't want to be, based on who raised us, how they raised us, the experiences that we had, the things that we learned and observed. And so then we learn, as we become adults, we can govern our own lives, we can build our own lives, we can raise our children differently, we can be more active in different things. I mean, mom and dad went from the Catholic Church to the Mormon Church, two completely different doctrines, even though they're both extreme religions. But they found one met them where they really aligned, versus one that no longer served them, but it was what took them through the first part of their life. And so I always say to people, you take what serves you and you leave the rest. And then you move on. Like, you just add that to your blank canvas and then you build on it. And so it doesn't matter what religion you're raised in. It doesn't matter what part of the world you live in. It doesn't matter if you come from a big family or a small family. You're getting all of the lessons and all the experiences that you're meant to have to be the person that you are today. You are exactly where you are supposed to be, having learned all the lessons and having all the experiences that you were supposed to have, so you can now be aware and awake so that you can alchemize everything when you're ready for it. And a lot of people right now in the world, they're ready for it.
Mhm. Yeah, I think so. And I want to tie that back to activity or inactivity, where even if you're inactive in the church and all those areas, then you are active in other areas. So that
Mhm.
doesn't mean that you're not progressing or you're making poor choices or you're not where
Yeah.
you're supposed to be. The point is to be active in something. It's like we were talking about voting earlier. Participate in your life and in your world. Maybe you don't like anybody who's on the ticket. You could write in, or you could go and maybe you could just talk to people there. You could participate somehow that feels right to you. The last thing is just to sit back and watch everyone else take over your
Mhm.
choices for you.
Yeah.
Do something, be active and participate. And I think it's interesting that when I looked up inactivity, um, so it actually says here that inactive in the church's definition means not actively participating, which I didn't even know that pulled up. But it also something that's interesting that came up is in the scriptures, inactive wasn't in there, but in the topical guide, idle and idleness is in there. And there's a lot of stuff about being idle. If any would not work, neither should ye eat in Thessalonians. And they did become an idle people full of mischief. And so growing up, it felt like this idleness was a sin, and idleness meant not participating in the church. But it's actually, you can be participating in the church and idle in your soul and denying your own
Mm.
soul in your own journey. So that and a sin, like the actual Hebrew definition, is something like
I
taking
missed the mark.
miss the mark. Yes. Like
Okay.
just off the path and just not at the mark. But anytime you can go back. What is the mark? Is it the being obedient in church and following the commandments and doing all these things you're taught that is the mark? No, the true mark is your own soul, the mark that you came
Mhm.
on earth to accomplish and follow and live. And only you can define that. And so
Okay.
actively staying on your own mark and 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 not being idle within in your heart and your own true calling. I think that's the key. So
Mhm.
there's a lot of judgment. I actually had a dream the other night of that someone was talking about me and I overheard it. And instead of just pretending I didn't hear, and she was saying something like, "Oh, it's just too bad that she's choosing, this life of party and whatever over the gospel, over the church. It's just too bad." And she said this phrase that I've literally never heard in my life. And it was, you know, toast ain't no firewood. That's not a saying, right? Toast ain't no firewood. And when I woke up, I was like, toast ain't no firewood. And anyway, but in the dream, I went to her and I said, you know what? I feel like I heard you saying something about me, that toast ain't no firewood, as in my light doesn't shine as bright. So, like, you're the firewood and I'm the toast, like, that your fire is stronger than mine. If I'm wrong, then please tell me so I can apologize to you. But that's what I heard. That was ballsy to do that. And I woke up actually first wondering about that phrase. And then second, so freaking proud of my dream self and my subconscious
Yeah.
for walking up to someone and calling them out in a way that was direct and kind, but strong, because that is the
Mhm.
goal. I want to be direct. I want to be clear, but I also want to stand in my own power. And yeah, and that is the opposite of idleness. That's actively living my mark, right?
Okay.
Okay, so I really wanted to share when I was looking at conference talks and stuff about inactivity. And there's a lot of stuff about anecdotes about people who were inactive and came back. But this is actually one about how somebody was inactive and they didn't come back. And I thought it was actually pretty beautiful. It's an excerpt from a talk called Taking Upon Ourselves the Name of Jesus Christ by Elder Robert C. Gay of the Presidency of 70. And it's from, I don't know, like 2000. It doesn't have a date on here, but I thought it was like 2018. So I'm just going to go ahead and read a portion of his talk. A few years ago, my older sister passed away. She had a challenging life. She struggled with the gospel and was never really active. Her husband abandoned their marriage and left with her with 4 young children to raise. On the evening of her passing, in a room with her children present, I gave her a blessing to peacefully return home. At that moment, I realized I had too often defined my sister's life in terms of her trials and inactivity. As I placed my hands on her head that evening, I received a severe rebuke from the Spirit. I was made acutely aware of her goodness and allowed to see her as God saw her, not as someone who struggled with the gospel and life, but as someone who had to deal with difficult issues I did not have. I saw her as a magnificent mother who, despite great obstacles, had raised 4 beautiful, amazing children. I saw her as the friend to our mother who took time to watch over and be a companion to her after our father passed away. During that final evening with my sister, I believe God was asking me, "Can't you see that everyone around you is a sacred being?" Brigham Young taught, "I wish to urge upon the saints to understand men and women as they are and not understand them as you are." How often it is said, "Such a person has done wrong and he cannot be a saint." We hear some swear and lie or break the Sabbath. Do not judge such persons, for you do not know the design of the Lord concerning them. Rather, bear with them. Can any of you imagine our Savior letting you and your burdens go unnoticed by him? The Savior looked upon the Samaritan, the adulterer, the tax collector, the leper, the mentally ill, and the sinner with the same eyes. All were children of his Father. All were redeemable. Can you imagine him turning away from someone with doubts about their place in God's kingdom or from anyone afflicted in any manner? I cannot. In the eyes of Christ, each soul is of infinite worth. No one is preordained to fail. Eternal life is possible for all. From the Spirit's rebuke at my sister's bedside, I learned a great lesson, that as we see as he sees, ours will be a double victory, a redemption of those we touch and redemption of ourselves. So with that, I ask, please stop telling people that they need to come back in order to receive their salvation or in order to find happiness or in order to find peace, right? Or to have what you say you have, because all are on their own journey. And a lot of us are finding more peace on the other side than we ever had there. I mean, right now I'm in this messy middle space, but I need to be here. And this is where I want to be. I wouldn't want to be anywhere else right now. Like, I actually feel, if given the option between having all of the answers given to me or having one question never answered and that bit of information withheld forever, I would choose that option of just having one thing missing because, well, in this life, not forever. That's the purpose. That's the point of being here, is to explore and discover. And if I knew everything, if I had everything already, then what would be even the point of being here? Like, I want to be on an adventure. I want to express everything that I'm experiencing fully and live this life to the fullest. And that might be the fool's journey and not the hero's journey, but it's mine and it's where I want to be. And so I just thought that was a really beautiful message.
Hmm. I love that. I wouldn't call that a fool's journey at all. I would say that's more than the hero's journey, and it's your own authentic path that you're meant to experience and embody. And that's what brings your light into the world, is your courage to step along your path knowing it's difficult and knowing that there are questions that you have and you don't know if you'll ever get answers. One thing that I highly encourage people to search for is the magic, is God's magic everywhere around us, to expect miracles and not to just hope for miracles, but to change our vision and change our perspective, and understanding that the universe is already filled with so much light, love, and abundance, that it's already there. And then a lot of times we just have to pull the veil away from our eyes for us to really see it. And you can do that in so many ways. Meditation is so beneficial. Just being in that stillness and just really being in that void and being within is where you will find the answers and the truth to everything that you're looking for. connecting to nature and just really grounding and stepping away from society and the world and all the noise and the chaos that we allow ourselves to get so involved in will also help us to find that peace and the answers that we're searching for. And if we want it bad enough, we'll find a way to make that happen. Everyone is on their own journey, and you have to protect where you're at. And you don't have to have the answers. And if you had the answers, you wouldn't be here.
Right.
Right. So enjoy the journey.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, just learn to be more present
Mm-hmm.
and learn to slow down and give yourself grace and not shame yourself and not allow others to shame you. I mean, what a beautiful lesson for, your higher self to manifest within your own dream, and for you to wake up and to feel the power of that because that was energetic, right? And we are more than just physical beings. I mean, there's so much to tap into and to recognize, and I hope the learning never ends. Like I hope it continues on.
Mm-hmm.
That's the fun. It's an adventure. We just have to be willing to stay on the path and stay curious and courageous. But,
Mm-hmm.
my message will be to protect your own experience and to allow it to be whatever it is, even if you're going through the midst of it and the motions of it, and just connect to what you feel your soul wants to learn.
Was there
Yeah.
anything else that we need to add, do you think, before we close it up?
Oh no, I don't think so. I think we're gonna listen to this and we'll probably have more to add on another
Always.
podcast. But no, I think it was a good conversation and I hope that it resonates with a lot of people and it just helps put people at ease, like feeling like they have to have some sort of answer or
Yeah. I hope
yeah,
that we can help people feel less alone.
yeah,
So easy to feel
yeah.
alone, like you're the only one feeling these things or that you're crazy and everyone's judging you. There's no judgment here.
Nope.
And we come from totally different places.
Hmm.
And it's okay if it's messy. It's okay.
Yeah. Well, and in the beginning, you were just so kind of like afraid to let people know that you were in where now you're like, I'm still pounding on the door. It's like, I'm still in the box. I'm still like, ugh, and I think people need to recognize that this whole thing is just a process for some. I was forced to go through pounding on my doors, when I was 18, right? And throughout. And so
Mm-hmm. It
it's
is
just,
really interesting to see you're 20 years past it, 20, whatever. And I'm in the thick of the
yeah.
middle part. So it's good for
But you
people to
were
see it.
also like so many people. I mean, more people I feel like are going to resonate with you, where I think people will just appreciate my point of view
Mhm.
because it's not common for somebody to waver and be excommunicated and come back full on
Yeah.
and then, you know,
Mm-hmm.
be inactive again the way that I have. I mean, I'm literally practicing blasphemy, to some people to a degree. And by me saying that I don't believe in a savior, we are our own saviors. And Christ helps us to see that. And so don't feel like, oh no, now I'm not going to be saved. Now I don't have Jesus to, you know, bridge that gap for me. All of this will unravel as needed. But we very much right now in the world need to be empowered to step into our own power and really, really, really remember who we are. And God is within us. We are a fractal of God itself. And so don't give your power away. That is not what Christ wants you to do.
Mm-hmm.
I had to make that clear because I know some people are going to be like, but that's the whole thing that I believe in. And that's what makes me Christian. And I'll tell you, that's not what makes me Christian. So
Yeah. Yeah. Oof. Okay. We're gonna go down another rabbit hole. Let's
Yeah.
but that's yeah, what makes you Christian? And what does saving really mean? I definitely have thoughts about that. Well,
Hmm.
we'll put a pin in those for later.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yay, fun stuff.
Okay. Love you.
Love you too.
Okay, love you.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
love you. Bye bye.